So the first mindfulness training is Reverence for Life. And it reads like this: aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion, and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. And I was rather taken with the idea of where we source our energy from. And in this first mindfulness training, Thich Nhat Hanh is really speaking to compassion as being the source of our energy. And it's compassion, or karuna, which allows us to transform suffering. And so a key to the first mindfulness training is committing to cultivate compassion and use it as our source of energy for the protection of the world. And in order to keep compassion alive in us, it's important that we stay in touch with the suffering of the world. And we can do this through many means, through sounds, images, reports, and also with direct contact. But Thich Nhat Hanh also speaks to the need for us to be careful, not to take in too much, that we need to stay in touch with suffering only to the extent that we will not forget, and we will keep compassion flowing within us as a source of our energy for our actions. And according to Buddhism, compassion is the only source of energy that is useful and safe. With compassion, energy blossoms through insight, and it's not blinded or reactive. And if our source of energy does turn from compassion towards any of the poisons like bitterness, cynicism, anger, we are likely to say and do things that cause harm and counter the intentions we have to shift life towards a better direction. And also, if we do too much, states of burnout often cause us to fall into polarization and lose insight into how things are interconnected. And then we lose our ability to be present. And at these times, it is really wise to pause and to find ways to be tended. And we all carry pain inside of us. And we can feel angry and we can feel frustrated. And sometimes we just can't go on until we do allow ourselves to feel the grief of what has been lost, or to find someone who can help us transform our anger. And the desire, often with anger comes the desire to do harm ourselves. And this made me really reflect on Joanna Macy's work, which was really brilliant in this regard, as she helped so many activists feel the depths of their emotion, especially if they were starting to feel burned out. and to reconnect to compassion as the source of their energy for their thoughts and actions. So living compassionately is a process of using our mindfulness practice to make our unconscious conscious. So we can know when we are sourcing our energy from compassion and when our energy is being sourced from somewhere else. And so this is a real key part. Another aspect of the first mindfulness training is nonviolence. And in the last part of what I just read, the first mindfulness training says, seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism. And Thich Nhat Hanh pointed out that we first practice nonviolence by cultivating peace within ourselves. And mindfulness practice is a practice of peace. And we begin by working to transform the wars that take place in ourselves. And this sort of caught my imagination too, to really start watching where I'm at odds within myself, and working to find my inner resolve. And each one of us carries, a certain amount of violence and a certain amount of nonviolence within us. And depending on our state of being, our response to life will be either more or less nonviolent. And if we do not recognize the violence within ourselves, and we divide the world into two camps, those who are violent and those who are not violent, and we sit in the nonviolent group, but attack those who we consider violent, the world will not know peace. And so while we cannot be completely nonviolent, it is possible for us to support each other in the process of moving in that direction. And I've just been so delighted with how our Sangha is increasingly becoming a place of understanding, a place of each of us, for each of us to cultivate within ourselves this sense of peace by honestly revealing ourselves to one another and receiving each other in compassion. And it was interesting that Thich Nhat Hanh believed that everyone can practice nonviolence, even generals. And to help soldiers and police people move in that direction of nonviolence, he was in touch with them. And so it was, I'm sure, people who witnessed the way that he would work with these people as something pretty special. So the first mindfulness training encourages us not only to feel compassion, but to learn ways to express it. It asks us to work on ourselves and work with those we would tend to condemn in order to have real impact on manifesting a peaceful world. And a third aspect of this first mindfulness training has to do with environmental awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh again points out that we humans are made entirely of non-human elements, such as the plants, minerals, clouds, and sunshine. And for us to practice in a deep way, in a true way, we must include the ecosystem. And I believe that all of us here are acutely aware that protecting human life is not possible without protecting all aspects of nature. A major challenge I am aware that we're all up against is how to effect change without becoming polarized and victimized by the powers of destruction, which seem to be having quite a heyday in the world right now. So in summary, the first mindfulness training asks that we use mindfulness practice to be aware of where we are sourcing our energy, and to be aware of what we are putting out into life through our thoughts, words, and deeds, and being aware of the effect that they are having. And over these coming months of study and practice on the 5 mindfulness trainings, I'm hoping that we'll each be able to hone our ability to know when we are sourcing from compassion, and what it is that we need when we aren't, and that we want to be realigned with our sense of compassion. And may our work together also assist each of us to cultivate a greater sense of peace within ourselves, while finding ways to help cultivate peace in others. So this is something we may want to be sharing about when we have moments where we're actually helping others find peace, or how we found it within ourselves. To increase nonviolence, we need gentleness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity directed at our bodies, at our feelings, and to other people. Thich Nhat Hanh encourages us to become nonviolence, so that when situations arise, we're not getting reactive and creating more suffering than is already taking place. And I'm also hoping that our work together will help us find ways, or inspire each other to find ways to regenerate the environment of which we are all a part. Thich Nhat Hanh ends one of his chapters on the first mindfulness training by saying, "Life is so precious, yet in our daily lives, we usually are carried away by our forgetfulness, anger, and worries, lost in the past, and unable to touch life in the present moment. When we are truly alive, everything we do or touch is a miracle. To practice mindfulness is to return to the present moment. To practice the first mindfulness training is a celebration of reverence for life." And so may we celebrate in this way together.
And now a poem by Cynthia West, titled The Hidden Trail. Feet that have roots stretching down into the earth learn beauty. Open souls raise energy up the body, then return it down to feed the deep unseen. You were warned this path didn't exist, that you could only tread on the sidewalk with crowds rushing to the bank, accounting, discounting punishments, rewards. Here, mouths are small, withered without smiles. You have escaped many times, following the hidden trail, sheltered under leaves. the uneven track, rough with rocks and curves. Feet feel their way in conversation, in family with river willows. Your sister, the laughing stream, bears away your grief. Mingled with cloud reflections and dancing branches, your burdens drift around the bend. The stones ask for your name, reaching out hands to pass understandings because you are listening. Their talk is food gathered over ages. It is the fruit you can never buy, only gain by welcoming the friendship waiting all around. River song comes alive, calling you to recognize it as the same music your blood has always hummed. The thorns they claimed would bar your path have dissolved in sunlit ripples, dappled shade. Feet with roots stretching down into the earth learn beauty. Open souls raise energy up the body, then return it down to feed the deep unseen.